The first book of Kings, chapter 1. Now King David was old, and stricken in years, and they covered him with clothes, but he gat no heat. Wherefore his servants said unto him, Let there be sought for my lord the king a young virgin, and let her stand before the king, and let her cherish him, and let her lie in thy bosom, that my lord the king may get heat. So they sought for a fair damsel throughout all the coasts of Israel, and found Abishag, a Shunammite, and brought her to the king. And the damsel was very fair, and cherished the king, and ministered to him. But the king knew her not. Then Adonijah the son of Haggith exalted himself, saying, I will be king. And he prepared him chariots and horsemen, and 50 men to run before him. And his father had not displeased him at any time in saying, Why hast thou done so? And he also was a very goodly man. And his mother bare him after Absalom. And he conferred with Joab the son of Zeruiah, and with Abiathar the priest, and they, following Adonijah, helped him. But Zadok the priest, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and Nathan the prophet, and Shimei, and Rei, and the mighty men which belonged to David, were not with Adonijah. And Adonijah slew sheep and oxen and fat cattle by the stone of Zoheleth, which is by En-Rogel, and called all his brethren the king's sons, and all the men of Judah the king's servants. But Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah, and the mighty men, and Solomon his brother, he called not. Wherefore Nathan spake unto Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, saying, Hast thou not heard that Adonijah the son of Haggith doth reign, and David our Lord knoweth it not? Now therefore come, let me, I pray thee, give thee counsel, that thou mayest save thine own life, and the life of thy son Solomon. Go and get thee in unto King David, and say unto him, Didst not thou, my lord, O king, swear unto thine handmaid, saying, Assuredly Solomon thy son shall reign after me, and he shall sit upon my throne. Why then doth Adonijah reign? Behold, while thou yet talkest there with the king, I also will come in after thee, and confirm thy words. And Bathsheba went in unto the king into the chamber. And the king was very old, and Abishag the Shunammite ministered unto the king. And Bathsheba bowed, and did obeisance unto the king. And the king said, What wouldst thou? And she said unto him, My lord, thou swearest by the Lord thy God unto thine handmaid, saying, Assuredly Solomon thy son shall reign after me, and he shall sit upon my throne. And now, behold, Adonijah reigneth. And now, my lord the king,
Hi,
thou
everyone,
knowest
I'm Shelley,
it
and
not.
you're watching There's No Place Like
And he hath
Home.
slain
I'm
oxen
back
and
with
fat
another
cattle,
question
and
narrative
sheep in
video.
abundance, and hath called all the sons of the king, and Abiathar the priest.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Glad to see you guys are back, Wendy and Chris. I hope you guys are having a good evening. I know it's Christmas Eve, and a lot of people are with their families and enjoying the spirit of the holidays and making the best out of what they can with what they have and what they know and understand and what they love about it. And so I understand if there's not a large participation of audience tonight. However, that's the beauty of online streaming. However, by accident today, I deleted one of my episodes while I was doing my little editing. But I think I figured out a way to restore it. It's taken me some time. It'll probably take a few days, but I will eventually get that video back up. And I can't remember which one it is right now. I'm not sure if you heard any of that prior to the very start of this when the music was playing in the background there. Let me make sure that, okay, it looks like all that. Let me turn that off. I don't need to play that anymore. Okay, so I wanted to start this off by showing something here. Okay, so this is a very debatable holiday season right now. It's 2024 for the best of our understanding and as far as what we know as time and dates go. I think that's the best way to just put it. So we're trying to build off of that, right? That 2024. But the thing is, we know that certain dates are mixed around, and we kind of went over that a lot last night, actually, in the day before, or the last stream before, where just because we know some things and we understand some truths about the history of or the origin of some of this stuff that we read and research and learn about, doesn't necessarily mean we're here to point fingers and judge people because they put up a Christmas tree and their kids go to bed eagerly waiting to wake up and open Christmas presents. So stuff like that's not anything worth arguing about. But there's a lot about Jesus that I didn't learn from the church. You know, I remember growing up going to Bible studies, going to vacation Bible school, going to church camps, going, Wednesday nights. I think if they had a Thursday night, I would have went on Thursday. Sunday nights, and there's a lot about Jesus that you don't really understand and learn about. And one thing I mentioned last night was the fact that Jesus come from a king, and that king was David. And as that narrator was reading, he was reading Kings 1:1. And the one thing I think people fail to understand about Jesus, the cornerstone for Christianity, where all of these debates and arguments come from, is conspiracy theories, all stem from a man who came from a line of so many kings they had to put their lineage into two books. On top of that, they had a whole nother series of books called Numbers, where it talks about different people that came from these people that Jesus also came from. And so he came from a line of kings. This is what I wanted to point out with this Kings 1:1. Now, when King David was old and stricken in years, and they covered him with clothes, but he had got no heat. Wherefore his servant said unto him, Let there be sought for my lord the king a young virgin, and let her stand before the king, and let her cherish him, and let her lie in thy bosom, that my lord the king may get heat. This starts off this whole series of books, Kings 1 and Kings 2. When you read through these, I know a lot of people that'll say, "Oh, I read the Bible. Oh, I read it," and I say, "Oh yeah." How many kings were there? They don't know. They don't really know and understand how many kings there were in Israel. I mean, Israel was no joke of a place. Their people were spread out over the world so much that a lot of their history gets misinterpreted and misstrued with things we learn from education. Like we'll learn about the Phoenicians, well, the Phoenicians are these people this mysterious sea people that could travel around on boats and created math and language or phonetics or whatever, language and writing and all this other mess. Regardless, that we learned that Enoch was the first scribe, the first person to write. I mean, it's interesting that they attribute to writing to the Phoenicians. The point that I'm trying to make with that is that the Phoenicians may have been Phoenicians, but they would have been Phoenicians only because of the reason I'm called an American, or you're called a Brazilian, or you're called a British, not British, but German, or someone from Britain. British, yeah, I guess it would be another name or term. The point is that these kings ruled over various places within the kingdom of Israel. The kingdom of Israel, in context with all this, is a people. So wherever there was a large group of Israelites, and we learn about that. Oh, let me pull it up here. Let me see if I can find it. Where's my bookmarks? Here we go. We learn about that in this book here, and this is a very interesting book right here. Let's see. Before I go on into that, let's catch up here. Jesus is our high king and priest. That is what Melchizedek means. Absolutely. It would only make sense he came from a kingly line. It can also be king of righteous. It's interesting. That's interesting you're saying all that. These names all mean something. They absolutely mean something. In fact, let's see if I can pull this up. Where is it? I'll read this. I'll see if I can find it. Okay, I'm not going to pull that up. But it says, all right. This is a thing I was trying to write, and I haven't finished with all this, but I'm not trying to do a scripted thing, but I'm trying to create like an opener so that every video is kind of in sequence or whatever. Anyways, it says, let me leave you with this. The evidence of Jesus's kingdom is all around us, but it's up to us to see it. Don't just take my word for it. Dig deeper, research, question, and seek the truth. If Jesus truly ruled for 1,000 years, then his kingdom isn't just a relic of the past. It's a reality that calls us forward. It's a reminder that we're part of something bigger and something eternal. Here at Truth Unfiltered, our mission is to challenge the narratives that keep us blind to the truth. So keep questioning, keep seeking, and above all, keep your eyes open. Thank you for joining me today. If you found this episode, or if you're finding this episode insightful, share it with somebody who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the truths and shape our world. All right. So I was trying to start off with that because I wanted to explain how the other day when we were looking back at, where was it? I have to pull this up again. My fault. I'm not prepared as I should have been. So Matthew 1, where it's given these genealogies here, when you go back through Kings, where is Kings? Well, let's pull this up. All right. Yeah, so I'll just pull it up over here. So whenever you get over here to Kings, when it starts talking about these people end up through their lines, you get a lot of these people here that are in this book. And this book is very interesting because it tells a lot about a lot about the early years right before Jesus is born. So a lot of these people are the fathers and grandfathers of the very people that were involved during the time of Jesus. So like when you read about King Herod in Maccabees, it's not the same King Herod that tried to kill baby Jesus. It's a different King Herod. It's a different Herod altogether. He's an older fella from a different time, but it's only a couple hundred years. I think it's like 167 years or something like that before Jesus is born, where all of this is taking place. And it ends roughly about 40 years before Jesus is born is when Maccabees ends. And so when Maccabees ends, you figure 40 years later comes Jesus. Well, this gives you an entire description. Maccabees, this is just Maccabees 1. I think there's 3 of them somewhere. I've only read the 1 though. But in Maccabees 1, what this whole thing does is it explains the entire setup of Rome, like how Rome came to be Rome, and then how Rome and the Jews, or not necessarily the Jews, the Israelites in general, were constantly at war with each other, no matter where they were. And I find it interesting as I'm reading through Maccabees here. I remember in history class learning about some of these wars and interactions, but we were told about them in a different way, like they're a different people. It's like when we don't recognize who we are necessarily because we're told we're from this land or that land. None of us are from the any land on the earth. I mean, if anything, we came from a little piece of earth in the Garden of Eden where Adam was created, and everybody else came from Adam and Eve. So Adam came from the dirt. Doesn't mean that we don't have the same body buildup and makeup that Adam had. We just, we're not necessarily the same people, is all I'm trying to say with that. And so, like I was saying and trying to point out and swaying off here with my point, Jesus comes from an entire line of kings. And when we start plugging in the timeline dates in back, like I said before, we're going to build this thing with ChatGPT, and because it's going to help us keep a streamlined timeline, make it look neat, make it look more easy to read, I guess. Other than me trying to write it down, if I can figure out how to get my iPad to hook up to all of this, it's going to be over with. And then you guys can really see what I'm thinking. Anyhow, this timeline, as you build it, you can plug all these people into dates. Now, at a certain point, you get away from dates like I'm just going to throw a number out. Instead of like 587, you're going to say like 580 or 590. Something to that effect. And so what ends up happening, by the time you get to today, you're going to be in a ballpark area of time of about 40 to 70 years. So there's a variance. And that's the problem. None of us really know exactly what day and hour, but we're never going to know until that moment comes. Will probably be when we all just say, all right, it's time to go to bed. And then maybe we don't wake up. Who knows how exactly that end happens as it involves us. But what we know is that it happens fast. It doesn't happen the way tribulation happened. Tribulation was a devastating period between 63 and 70 AD. All of that happened over a 7-year period. All of the disciples getting beheaded, the disciples getting martyred and killed and burned, and all that. It's like John was saying earlier to me, Roman candles come from burning Christians. I mean, that was a terrible thing that they were going through at that time. The blessing is that we don't have to go through that again. Whether we went through it before or we're here for the first time and we just have to be here for whatever reason, we don't have to deal with 7 years of this. So I think the difference in understanding for some of us comes with the readiness to be prepared for what is coming. It doesn't appear that it's going to happen in the far distant future as things progress within society, culturally, politically, economically, just all the way around life in general. It's only fair to say life is getting better when life is getting better for you. But if when you look around and you see it's not necessarily getting better for everyone else around you, then obviously life is getting better just because it's getting good. It's good for you. And that's where a lot of these content creators get lost in trying to understand some of this stuff. And it's why they end up getting sidetracked. I've noticed with some of them lately, and John and I were talking about this earlier, how some of these guys have gotten to a point where they've reached an understanding and a boldness and confidence to talk about Tartaria, the mud floods, the buried cities, the hidden 1,000 years, the little season, and the millennial kingdom. The issue is that they end up sitting on this fence. And where I'm going with that is, say, over here in Matthew chapter 7. Let's pull that up. Verse 21. When it comes to the millennial kingdom, this isn't a theory to me. This isn't something that I just, I like that idea. I'm going to learn about that. I'm going to read. It's so fascinating. I just want to know about it. It's not just, I like what JT follows JC says. Oh, I like what Shelly over at Question and Narrative. I like what she said. Jason Jack's full of wonderful information. I love what all these people are saying. I have no hate for any of them. I have nothing but love for all of them. What happens, though, is and I'm not picking on any of these guys that I just named in particular. We're past that. We're moving on. I'm talking about just people in general, especially not just content creators. I see this in real life. I've met people here and there, strangers sometimes, and sometimes people I interact with on a regular basis. And we've had these same conversations that I'm talking about with you guys right now. And as I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's awesome. Somebody near me, someone close to me, someone I could talk to. And then I don't hear from them. It's it. Boom. Conversation dead. It's over with. Until maybe when I see them again, randomly, here and there. Outside of that, is there, people aren't really discussing this content that much outside of, they get to a point where they go, well, what's bigger than this? And then when they can't figure out anything bigger than this, because nobody's given them the thought or idea to think about that part yet, they get stuck in the whole, well, what if it ain't true? What if it is and what if it isn't? If I ride that center line, that border in between, what ends up happening is not everyone that says unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of the Father, which is in heaven. What this is saying is that it's either you believe in the Bible or you don't. You believe everything in it or you believe none of it. To believe this and to believe that and to think this because this person over here or that person over there or the Rev said this and that is ridiculous, for one, to even think or to do. But to do that what that ends up doing, it's, you go, I do believe Jesus was here, sent here to save me, for my sins and just, die on a cross and all that and do all the things that he said he was going to do. But, I think a lot of it was like metaphorical because, we don't really know who wrote this book. We can question everything. And we just can question it and just question it and question it, Well, there is some truth in that. And before I move on with that truth, let me catch up with what you guys are talking about here. It's hard for life to get better for most people because this is about $290 trillion of debt in the world. Oh, there is world, but there's only $90 trillion of money. It's not going to get better. You're right. You know, and I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at that thought, that situation. This whole thing is ridiculous. I know this is one thing they don't want you to talk about, and this is one thing that when you get off work, you're hanging out with your buddies, drinking a cold, and this isn't a conversation they want you to have either then. And that's the conversation that if they could print this money, just make as much of it as they want, how does debt exist? You know, how does the government need any of our money? It really doesn't make sense when you really think about it. But I'm not going into all that, and I will I will break all that stuff down. We can go all the way to the top of the political board, and I can work this puzzle all the way down to the very bottom. I can show you how your mailman's involved. This whole thing is a racketing scheme, but it's a big, huge system built as like a pyramid. And once you understand how it's designed and how it functions, man, you can go into any rabbit hole you want to go into and learn a whole lot about how this world works. And it never hardly functions the way you think it would or should. All right. So anyways, but you're right. It doesn't make sense. The whole money situation. We are their straw man. Absolutely. That's right. Speaking of Roman, I was watching a documentary of Caligula earlier. It confirmed what I knew about the papacy being from the line of Caesars, and the Caesars, the line of pharaohs, can't unsee it. Oh yeah, oh man. So there's a whole huge long rabbit hole on the papacy. In fact, someone did a really good documentary on it not long ago. I can't remember who it was. I'll see if I can find it, and I'll show that the next time I come on. Let me fix this real quick here. Boom. All right, there we go. Okay, so that's corrected there. Yeah, that's a huge that's I don't know. You can fall off in that rabbit hole and just not worry about hitting the bottom. I mean, you'll just fall forever. There's a lot that needs to change for anything to get better. Absolutely. Yes, there's a lot that needs to change for anything to get better. Absolutely. And that's the thing. As a millennialist, if that's what you want to call it, you know, someone that deep dives into eschatology, whenever it comes to this stuff, it don't really matter to me if it's tomorrow, next week, next year, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, or 1,000 years from now. We should be preparing every day. You don't know how long you're going to have to wait whenever you're done breathing this air. Because, you know, it could be instant. It could be like when you fall asleep and wake up, how you could sleep for 6 hours or 8 hours, but it feels like you were just awake. It could be like that, but then again, it may not be like that. It may be that we die and we just wait. You know, it could be, you could be conscious. You may not be conscious. You may not know what's going on, and time may fly for you and it may drag out. All I'm saying is that it doesn't matter to me. I can't do anything about that. So I don't worry about that. What I know is that according to scripture in these timelines, we shouldn't have much time. Whether we do or don't, according to this, if in order for this to fully be the truth and be true, everything in it has to be completed. And as we figured out and learned recently within the last few episodes, if for those who are new to all this,
chapter 21 of Revelations in 20 actually, chapter 20 of Revelations, we learn what part of this Bible we're at. And so we know we got to get to through these next few steps in order for us to proceed into chapter 21 and 22. But here it says, many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name have thou cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works. There's a whole series not a series, there's a whole long video a guy did of an old man who supposedly died and went to hell. He talks with God and ends up getting released and comes out of hell and comes back. And he kind of talks about some of this stuff, which is really weird. And it's a very interesting video. I'm going to have to pull it up and let you guys see that too. I didn't go down any rabbit holes for that one. I'm just really good at pattern recognition. It was easy to see them linked, but that documentary just confirmed what I was seeing. Oh, yes. So it's funny you said that, Wendy, because we were talking about that. Me and John Fry were talking about this earlier. I think it's a way of reading, and it's a way of interpreting information. So, for example, when you see a door and there's a sign with an X that says "Do not enter," it's not just a word to you. That symbolizes in your brain a thought of patterns. And these patterns are situations, visual situations, like opening the door and something bad happening, opening and something catches on fire, opening the door and you get sick, open the door and you go to jail, open the door and you get a fine. The sign tells you that. And so it's like when we read this stuff, it's like when we get to this part here, it says, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. Because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. And to me, I don't just see these words. I know what a gate is, and I understand the narrowness of a gate, how that could be. But I don't just see that, I see choices. I see events. I see yeses and nos. I see failed promises, or whatever, or kept promises. I see the yeses and nos of our lives. It's when I read that, it's like I can visualize. I try to visualize what I'm reading, so that when you see it happening, you understand it. You just kind of can put yourself there, even though I've never been through anything you've been through. But say we were talking and you were sharing something with me, I can see where you're going with that. I can understand that, and I can get it, even if I could realistically never experience that. Yeah. It's like you can see the message. It just becomes clear. You're no longer just seeing words on a page. It just becomes clear. And I guess that's all I wanted to. I guess the only point I was really trying to make with that is I get it. I understand where you're coming from. But you're right. Back to what you said. We are their straw man. That goes into this whole conversation and topic about rights, human rights, laws, maritime law, just the law of the land, nationalism, citizenry, and all that mess. And all of that really is only important to know and understand when it comes to things like, validating certain truths or falses within history. And kind of some of it doesn't really affect us today anymore. but it does whenever people cling to them, and lean on those things that really are against us. Ultimately, is what that boils down to. Like I was saying, over in Kings, not in Kings, but in Matthew, though, it says, many will say in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name? And simply put, people understand this, or at least they should. It's not being complicated. It's just saying that there's going to come a day when everybody is being judged, and there's going to be people that really you would think they deserve to go to heaven, or they at least deserve whatever fruits await for them, and they may not make it. And that's the sad thing about it. And the reason they may not make it is because there will be times in their life where they chose to say, I don't know if I believe this, but I believe him, or I believe her, or I believe that, or I believe this, but I don't believe that this means exactly what it's saying. I believe that this part right here is designed to confuse me. And to say that out loud makes you sound ridiculous when you think about it, because our Father is not the Father of confusion. I mean, he's Father of truth. And so anything that could be confusing is you. That's you bringing that in. You're allowing that confusion to exist. And a lot of that is taught to you through the way we're educated in it. Let's see. I don't, I'll be honest with you guys. I started to watch Shelly's video today. I haven't watched it yet. I'm not gonna do a breakdown on that one. I just noticed that, and I really want to watch that. And I don't necessarily want to wait until this stream is over. So maybe we'll watch it together in here in just a little bit. Like I said before, I don't follow these content creators for the same reasons. I don't feel like any of you are necessarily following me because it's me. I feel like I follow them because I like what they're saying, and I like the content that they produce. Whether I agree with them or not, I think that it's important that we pay attention to what each other has to say, especially. And like I said, I'm not trying to pick on her, so maybe I won't watch that with you guys. But this is something I wanted to point out. This here we see she has 80, almost 7. She has 79,000 subscribers. Being blunt here. That's yes. See, hey, see, somebody pays attention, and that's what I love about this stuff, is when people figure this stuff out. 42 kings and 42 and the Antichrist gets 42 months. Yes, yeah. Yeah, and then you'll get to the 14s. There's like sets of generations. It's like 14, 14, 14, something like that. Like 14 generations, 14 generations, 14 generations. And it all leads to Jesus. It's in each one of these 14 generations, they all have like a significance. I have a feeling if we could watch our entire history like a movie, the history of human beings, the real unedited raw version of it. Oh man, I think it would be a fascinating thing to be able to see all of these events from a third person perspective, like a movie, But at the same time, I'm kind of glad we get to see it all firsthand, But anyways, back to what I was pointing out here. And again, I'm not trying to pick on her. This is not me breaking down her narrative this evening. It could have been any other YouTube person that I watch up here. What I want to point out here, and the importance of this message, I'm just a regular fella. I have kids, I have a job, I have bills. Um, I drink these terrible drinks, even though I know there's crazy conspiracies around them and whatnot. They may not be good for you, but this is, feels like it's helping me at the moment. The point is, I don't just hunt, fish, drink beer, hang out with people, my friends, my buddies, and do stuff like that. We're in a war right now. And a lot of people don't want to accept that because the war we're fighting doesn't look like the war that you would see or think to see on TV. What I mean by a war, we're in a war for your soul, for your spirit right now. I fight for God. That's what I'm doing. And I've been dealing with this fight my entire life. At one point I pulled away. I strayed really far off from serving him. I was serving myself during that time. And during the time I was serving myself, things just kind of went south. Let's put it that way. But during that time, I still was looking and searching for him, trying to find and understand the truth. That's right. Yeah. It's a war for our soul and our spirit and our mind. They're trying to defeat us from within. We hear these words like, oh, they're going to attack us from within, or they're going to get us from within. And we think like they're going to send people over here. They're going to build a house next door and have a family and be like normal neighbors. And then one day they're going to come over with AKs and, take you away or something. It's not exactly like that. We need to listen to what they're telling you when they say these things. Especially when they're speaking politician talk and legalese and stuff like that. We're in a war right now. A spiritual battle is being taken place. Whether you meant to, wanted to, or like it or not, the day you took your first breath, you were commissioned into this holy war, and from that moment, you were a soldier. Whether you knew how to fight and participated willingly or not, you're a part of this. And what ends up happening for myself, and yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Welcome, James Osis, in Christ. I'm not really sure I said that right. But what's up, man? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We will kind of talk about. We're talking about it now. But like I was saying, you're commissioned to this war, and so what I mean by that is I look at this stuff, and when I read into it and learn about it, and then I go out into the world and I'm dealing with people in normal life, I have no problem talking about it. I know what people are going to probably think about it. I've already been through the BS. I've already been through the name calling. I've already been through the defamatory walks. I've already lost a YouTube page and had to start over several times. It's not a new thing to me to deal with all the criticism that comes with this. But I'll be honest, that one thing alone helped build my faith. It didn't deter me. It helped build it. And the reason I can say that is because Jesus himself says this will happen. If you go out here and talk about the things I'm telling you, everybody's going to hate you. So when we talk about the little season, when we talk about the millennial kingdom, the mud floods, the hidden history, then we're crazy. When you go to someone and you say, hey, look, this right here is a person. It says there's no place like home, but there's a person behind this. She's the narrator behind this entire series. Again, I'm not picking on her. I'm talking about all these Little Season YouTube creators. All of them do it. She's not the only one, but so that's why she just so happened to be up, and I'm going to watch her video later. But the point is, that's one person standing in front of 79,000 people. So what I see, coming from a military background, with a combative, mechanical, logical mind, I see a army with their Goliath in the front. And I don't care that it's Goliath. I'm cool with Goliath. I could sit and have coffee and hang out with Goliath. We could talk, me and Goliath could. However, this Goliath is going to lead that 79,000 people in his army or her army in the same direction I'm leading mine, in the same direction that God is leading me, behind me. And so if they're not willing to do that, then what I see is, oh, this could be an issue. That's 79,000 people that might get corrupted and might get lost and might get misled. So I'm looking at it like, oh, shoot, I need to say something, because if I don't say something, whoever this is, Jules Smith 7484, I just wanted to say that this is great advice. I don't know what she's talking about in this video. I hadn't watched it yet. But whatever it is, this is great advice. And I don't know, it could be. And it may be very good, great advice. The problem is, if it's not, though, that's 79,000 people that could be negatively affected by this. I can go to JT Follows JC's channel and say the same thing, and I can open up my page. I don't have anything like they have. I mean, but I'm new to this game, in this YouTube game. I'm sitting at 90. We're looking pretty good, for as far as I know. That's more than one person, and I can't complain. I'm not really worried about that, though. That'll either build or it won't. It'll grow or it won't. That's not important. If this 90 is who all I'm supposed to be dealing with and talking to, that's all that matters. Whoever needs to hear what I'm saying is all that matters. That's what I'm trying to, it's all I'm trying to say. And so when I look at the little season, when I look at Jesus coming from this line of kings, the fact that this little dude, David, was willing to go take down this big old giant dude, the fact that this man allowed them to beat him to an unrecognizable disfigurement, dies in sufferance and remembrance of all of my sins. I hadn't even been born yet. I've never even been here. But yet he did that for me. He had the courage, the strength, and the will to do that. And then 12 more men died right after that. Not only that, millions of people died because they were following this man. And when you look at the history, the true biblical history of who Jesus is, where he comes from, then it doesn't matter that we don't know what his name truly was, that they were calling him Yeshua. It don't really matter that that stemmed from the Greek word Jesus, hail Zeus. It doesn't really matter that it's Hebrew for Yeshua, Yeshua in Hebrew, or Yeshua in Hebrew, Yeshua in Aramaic. I think it's the dialect. And just to be clear, Aramaic is Hebrew. It's like North and South. We both are American. We both speak English, but one of us speaks like me, slow and drawn out. The other one speaks, fast and let's get it done, And a lot of that also leads to, misunderstandings as far as how we judge one another too. Sometimes we think if someone talks slow or talks a certain way, that must be what's in their head. And it's not always the case. And I'm a clear testament to that. And I know a lot of people that learn this stuff, especially, are a testament of that. James H. in Christ, yes, sir. He's a testament to that. He could testify to what I'm saying. That's why I know it's the truth. Because, whenever you have to, it's that we've been through this stuff. We see these type of things. We understand that some of this stuff is important. Some of it's not important. It's like the whole Christmas debate. It's a ridiculous argument. Was Jesus black or white or Middle Eastern? it's really a ridiculous argument. It doesn't matter. We all get new bodies anyways. I hope I get to look the way I want to, though. It would be kind of cool, I think, maybe to design myself. But maybe I don't get to. Maybe I don't get to. Maybe I'm just stuck with what I got. But either way, I'm okay with that too. Hair, no hair. That's why I have to wear this hat, because this fan makes my head cold, and that'll hurt. It starts to hurt top of my head. But back on track. This is an army of 80,000 people that could be misled. And just to be clear, I'm going to take this off of her. This JT follows JC. That's 26,000 followers. That's 26,000 people that could be misled. Now, on the fair side, he's not necessarily preaching a message or anything in his content. He's so much as he's just trying to point out, hey, there is something that's been hidden. Come look and see the evidence I found. And so I understand where he's coming from, and that's a commendable thing. It's why I'm not necessarily I'm not attacking any of these guys. I'm just pointing out that the things that I appreciate about them when it comes to that. However, in comparison to what we were just discussing with Question the Narrative, I still look at this as this dude is leading an army of 26,000 people. Doesn't matter that it's not 79,000. Let's pull up one that has a good bit. This is a video that I was listening to earlier. This song, it's a beautiful song, by the way. 430,000 subscribers. Now, this is just a video of a song. This has nothing to do with scripture, has nothing to do with millennial kingdom, any of that. However, if he were, if there was someone sitting here doing what I'm doing and telling you what this stuff says, and not sitting here going, yeah, I think, maybe this, maybe that, whatever. What I would see is that this dude is standing in front of 430,000 people that could be in God's army, but there may not be now. And, they may be lost. They may be, like I said earlier, the many that will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name? Have thou cast out devils in thy name? And haven't I cast out devils in your name and done many wonderful works? I mean, I've saved a lot of people. Like that pastor. He showed me his belt. He's real proud of all his little notches. And says, this is a notch for every life I've saved. And all I did was repeat what Jesus said. Nobody saves but God, my Father in heaven. At that moment, that pastor, and I think he knew at that moment that any further conversation with me wasn't going to go the way he wanted it to. And so he backed out of that opportunity to talk with me. But so do a lot of them. If they don't just get outright aggravated or mad at me for even trying to talk with my brain and my mind, I guess. All right, let's catch up with you guys. No one should be dogmatic about any of it. Father will convict us and meet us where we're at. Yes, absolutely. That's when we are all judged at the end of the day. When we're all judged at the end of it, I think it's going to be a lot more wholesome than we give it credit. I think there's going to be a real, interaction with us and God, where he kind of goes over, do you understand why this was wrong, what you did here? And, and I think he's going to know if you understand that or not. Let's say, for example, you had a problem stealing, and you got caught a lot, but other than that, you're a relatively decent person. If we let you into this kingdom, and we let you into this gate that Shelley thinks we're already inside of, are you going to continue to steal? It's really what he needs to understand from that. And if you say, no, I'm never going to do it again, I'm sorry. But God knows you. He knows that you're saying, I'm sorry, but tomorrow you're going to do it again anyways. He's probably not going to let you in that gate. And that's what ends up happening with these fellas. JT follows JC, seems to be pretty indifferent, which is what I like about him. He's just preaching some truths. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Exactly what I was saying. He's not, claiming allegiance to one way or the other. It's still clear. He's clear that he's still searching for the truth, as we all are. Even me, as I'm talking in this video tonight, I still search for the truth. I read into this and I study this stuff every day, and it's not because I'm just addicted to it. The stuff's fascinating. I don't know. It's just fascinating to me, especially when you're reading something and it reminds you of something in the world you recognize, and you go, oh, let me look into that. You open up a tab, start to scroll around a little bit. Next thing you know, you're reading something and you're in a whole nother rabbit hole. And now you're looking around going, dang, should I tell everybody or should I leave that one to myself? You just got to put you in a tough spot. So I get on one hand, some of these content creators didn't mean to discover this. All right. To be clear, what I mean by that is, let's take myself, for example. I was looking in my stuff. I have a YouTube channel somewhere else. And it's totally based around like gameplay, video games. In my youth or younger days, I guess, when YouTube was kicking off, I think I wanted to be a YouTuber. Like I wanted to play video games and YouTube, and whatever. I wanted to do stuff like that. And I wanted to, to do that instead of having to be a plumber. I didn't want to be a doctor either. I didn't want to go to law school. I didn't want to do all these different things. I wanted to do something I would enjoy, really. And I never really thought about doing YouTube. But what ends up happening with a lot of them, something kicks off. It's for whatever reason during their search for the truth, they ended up into the world of the Little Season. They started discovering it. They saw the mud floods. They saw the buildings. They saw the tools and the fireplaces and the architecture and all the different things. And when they saw all that, they go, oh man, that's worth talking about. Everybody would love to hear it. And be honest, everybody does love to hear it. As soon as they see those videos, they latch onto them, hit subscribe, hit follow, and they watch it and they follow that. And then the guy on the other hand who's made the video is sitting here going, oh my goodness, 14,000 views on that one video. And I just posted it yesterday. That's crazy. Dude, a couple more, I'll have $1,000. Oh man, I can quit my job. I'm making $20,000 a month doing this. But here's the problem. They get to this point and then they go, well, dang, what is bigger than this? What is bigger than the millennial kingdom? What is bigger than Jesus's kingdom being hidden from us? What's bigger than that? And they're thinking, oh no, if this is true, I need to accept it. But if I accept it, I may not qualify for some of these brand deals anymore. I may not be able to get this marketing ad revenue or this revenue or that revenue. And I may end up having to go back to my regular job. And I may have to do these videos for free. Ooh, that's a tough position to be in. Keep preaching. Rev, I have to hit the hay. Shelly is wrong. Thanks for moderating, Wendy. Keep preaching the truth, guys. Blessings to you both. Absolutely. Yeah. Good night, James. It was a blessing. Thank you for being here, brother. Hope to see you again. And have a blessed evening, James. It was nice meeting you, when he says. And so I've seen you around, Miss Wendy. I've seen you in the comment section. Your name is usually Blue, so we might talk about correcting that over here someday. But I noticed you and several others, certain people stand out within the comment section, especially when they talk a good bit. And I was always a little on the fence on whether I should show my face, talk about who I am or not, or stay behind one of these faceless video people or whatever. But then I got to thinking about it, it really don't matter to me. My face is seen or not. It doesn't change anything at the end of the day. But what does change, I guess, is maybe it helps explain some things, maybe it makes some things make sense or something to that effect. I'm not really sure where I was going with that. No, I'm good with it. I love that you have something to say. In fact, I like it when anyone has anything to say, especially if I'm on a tear and I'm saying stuff that I shouldn't say, or if I get misled, or if I'm on the wrong track. I definitely like going back and reviewing whatever it is I'm dealing with to make sure that I didn't leave anything out or miss anything. And that's the whole thing. The whole point of all that I wanted to get to is that this message, if we read this thing and we get to chapter 20 and we go, yeah, that's right, we are, this does match up with what we're perceiving. We are seeing this little season. We are seeing this deception. We are seeing everything just get worse and worse and worse and worse all around us. And yet it's not ever really getting as worse as it could. We're not really running around fearing for our lives. It's not like we're getting gunned down in the streets and stuff like that. I know there's some wars going on here and there throughout the world, but just the same as it is with anything that you discuss on that topic, there's always an exception to anything. Just like you can say that nobody can throw a hammer, and then there'll be one dude that can throw it for some reason. You just be the exception, and there's always that. But that's not what I'm saying here. What this is saying is that what happens is a lot of these people get to this point and they're afraid to move forward with it, especially like I said back in Revelation. They don't understand this part, the Gog and Magog, because they don't understand and how the devil is going to deceive all the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, and then to gather them to battle. Like, how's that even going to happen? And one thing that, and John Fry points this out a lot when we talk, we are the smallest community of biblical believers in the world right now. Especially like I said before, this is not a denomination to me, but if it were, kind of like Baptist or Methodist or something like that, if it were a denomination of faith, then we're the smallest denomination. I mean, we're the smallest group of people that really believe that, or believe that in any potential possibility. And I'm not saying that everybody fully believes, the ones that say they believe, that not everybody fully believes this, that are looking into it. Some people just kind of believe it or kind of understand it. And there's some people that are just learning about it. And that's, so like I said, what happens with these creators, they make this content on it, and then they just can't seem to move past the metaphors in their head. Some of this stuff had to be spiritual. Some of it had to be different than what it actually is reading like. What I'm reading, it says, and they went up on the breadth of the earth, and they encompassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city, and fire came down from God. I don't want God to take me out with fire from heaven. And so they're afraid to move on past that part to the next part. They're afraid to move forward because they don't want to be part of that group. Well, just to be clear, I have to find it. We don't have to deal with that. We'll go back. We can go through this whole Revelation book, and I could probably do it in a night, in probably a whole night. But we probably won't have time to do it tonight. We only have 1 hour left. If I even do that full hour, I may cut this short at 30 minutes there, Wendy. I'm just saying. I think I'm about to finalize my point here for this evening. But the point that I'm making with this here, Revelation chapter 20 is that they get to that part right here in verse 9 of chapter 20, and they don't understand how their involvement is going to be what their involvement is going to be like when it comes down to the camp of the saints and the fire from heaven and the beloved city and all that. And they're afraid to get this wrong. I don't want to get out here and make all these videos about, well, what's going on, and then be wrong. And then everybody's hating me and calling me names and making me feel ridiculous for saying something that's not right. That's not what I'm saying to do. Anyways, all I'm saying is that they get to verse 8 and 9, and then they go, ooh, how do I fit in with this? And the reality is we don't have to worry about it. Like I said before, I'm not gonna go surround any camp, nowhere. I don't care if it's 10 miles down the road and they come to me and say, hey, everybody in the world's meeting up 10 miles down the road to surround this camp. I'm gonna sit my butt right here and hang out at the house. I might go outside and start a fire in the fire pit, and hang out with my dogs and enjoy a cigarette or something like that. But I'm not going to go deal with this camp. I'm not going to go attack them. I'm not going to involve with that. I'm not worried about drones flying around, whether they're angels or drones. It doesn't matter to me what they are. I'm not worried about any of that. We're here to witness these things. The people that wake up in this generation are here to witness these events. Without witnesses, the events don't matter. Clearly, they matter enough to be written about, and they're written in this book right here. We call it the Bible. And either you believe what it says or you don't. I know what it says right here. I also know further on back, some people don't really participate. We just kind of observe these things. It doesn't mean you're not affected by the events. It doesn't mean that you don't have struggles, that now you know some things, or now that you're committed to God and you're letting God run your world and run your life and dictate your decision making and all that all of a sudden now everything's going to be perfect and boom, happily ever after. We still have to endure all the deceptions and all the products that create these deceptions, and we still have to put our guard up, and we still have to deal with these principalities. I'm not going to attack any of these people out of hate, and I'm not attacking them in general. It's called reproof and correction. It's what this Bible is designed. It's one of the things it's designed to do. It's for people that know it to be able to say, no, I don't think that's right. Because it says right here in this book, in this chapter, in this verse, leading on down, he's talking about such and such, and this is what you're talking about, and he didn't like that, so I'm going to say he doesn't like that for you either. And that's the way we're supposed to use that in that way. It's not to say, hey, you're dumb, or you're a terrible person, or anything like that. It's to build you, it's to help you grow. I understand everybody has to find this information and this truth on their own. It helps to have guides. It helps to have people like myself, Miss Wendy, John Fry, Jason Jack, JT Follows JC, even Shelley. I mean, it takes this entire network of people for any of this information to get out. Now, everybody's not going to hear everything correctly. Everything they say is not going to be the truth. Just like everything I say may not resonate with every truth bone in your body. But that's where your discernment comes in. That's why I'm saying, like, this stuff, you will need to read this stuff to learn it on the level that a lot of these people learn this stuff or know it. You will have to read it, and you'll have to read it a bunch, and you'll have to do that over and over until you understand it. Now, the issue is that if you do that, you, like Wendy said earlier in one of her comments, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's a thing that a lot of us in this community struggle with. I think, you know, I deal with that with my family a good bit. You know, why are you this way, or why are you that way? Why'd you do this and why'd you do that when everybody else would have done it this way? Well, I don't care. I really don't. You know, I know what it's going to happen. I know how you're going to feel about it, and I know what it's going to lead to. And just because I know all these regretful things doesn't mean that I'm going to go against what God said. And if God says to do the opposite of what you're saying, that's what I'm doing. What he says, the opposite of what you're saying. And it's not meant to offend you. It's to let you know where my allegiance is. And my allegiance and loyalty would be to you or anyone else. If it was that you were leading me the way God is. And that's where I'm at with all of this. You either believe what this book says or you don't. And any YouTuber or content creator that wants to come on YouTube or get on mainstream network, news, media, cast, whatever, and they want to talk about this book, if they want to talk about Revelation chapter 20, if they want to talk about Genesis chapter 1, if they want to talk about Samuel, Kings, Philippians, Colossians, I don't care what book they want to talk about. If what people are discussing online or anywhere else in the world, in public and in real life, at your church down the road, and they're not telling you what this book really says because they're afraid maybe they'll lose an endorsement. Maybe they're afraid they'll lose a job, a paycheck. Maybe they're afraid they'll lose some ad revenue. I don't know what they're afraid of. Maybe they're afraid that they'll be wrong. You know, I don't know. But if they're not choosing to stick with this and they're just baking in half-truths with their, okay, so there was a beginning, but it didn't happen the way they said it did. Okay, there was a flood, but not like the whole world. But just like most of it, or like some of it, you know, or like, oh yeah, there was a Matthew and there was a Jesus being born, but not exactly like, she was not like technically not a virgin, like, it's like kind of like sitting on a toilet seat or something. You know, people will always bake into this thing and feed themselves with extra BS with anything they can to make this book not real and valid, to make this book not the full truth. And it's either the full truth or it's not. For us to sit here and go, hey, you know, I don't know, I kind of think this, kind of think that. It's not right. It's not right to do that, and you know you're wrong for it, especially when this book tells you that and tells you what happens to those who are that way. I ain't even read that part yet, but it tells you what happens to those naysayers. It tells you right here in Matthew. And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. That's literally, he's saying, go on, get out of here. I don't care that you went to church every Sunday. I don't care that you learned how to recite every single scripture in whatever books of the Bible. Do you know what this book says? Do you know what God meant, what Jesus meant? Do you know why Melchizedek, as Whitney was pointing out earlier, said, and why he was even here? You know, he came a few times to even know who he is. I mean, these things would be important to know what this book means and know what it really says. It wasn't, I think, now, this is just my opinion, I think it wasn't originally intended for us to read it and go this deep into it. However, it was written this way so that no matter how deep the deceptions of this little season go, we still have everything we need fixed in this book called the Bible. This is our secret weapon, and it's not really even a secret. It's just most people don't know how to use it. But we're giving you a lesson on this weaponry right here. Yeah, I don't care either. I mean, and on one hand, it's weird to say that. Like, I don't care. I don't care what you're doing. However, I really do. Deep down, I care because what I would hope that what's going on in your life are blessings, things that are working out good for you. You're making good decisions. The Father is taking care of you, blessing you, and that's what I would say that I care about. But if you're not living according, your life according to the way God would have you, I really don't care what you got going on because it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't have to worry about you generations from now anyways, and neither you got to worry about me. I mean, your life is your life. And so I get it. But you can't serve the Father and Mammon. That was a perfect example of that. Oh, yes, that's right. You can't serve two masters. That's what that's where that comes from. You can't serve two masters. All right. I think I've caught up with the comments there. All right. Yeah. But yeah, so Jesus says, that he'll profess unto them, I never knew you, depart from me. If you understand this, and as we keep on reading, then it starts talking about what it's going to be like and how they're going to be able to see and understand what's coming and what's ahead of them. All of the events of tribulation. That's where he goes on to explain from that point. But the wild thing is, if he's saying that he's going to be this way with his people that he's standing in front of, what makes us think that just because we haven't met him in person yet and seen him on television everywhere, that he's not going to hold that same standard when it comes to us? I mean, we read, and like I said, we go to church on Sundays, but then on Saturdays, we're at the bar down the road, getting our freak on and whatever. But we're doing anything we can to do what we want to do in this life and in this body and in this world. We're serving ourselves. We're serving our own interests. The preacher done gave us a good message. We felt good when we came out of church. We went and had beautiful lunch with our family, and Daddy paid for it, so it's not a big deal, We're blessed. We're happy. We're doing good. We're doing fine. So why do they don't even need God really in their minds, but they don't admit that, not out loud anyways. Subconsciously though, your efforts and actions drive them in that direction, the direction that tells them, I don't really need God. I got everything I need, but I just went to church on, this and that. I don't have to come home and read this book because that pastor done read it all. He knows what it needs, what I need to know from it. Well, that's okay. Explain that to God when he comes, because he's coming. And whenever he gets here, let's go back to, when he gets here with his holy city, New Jerusalem, that comes down out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. It says, and I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them to be their God. The big man is coming, not just Jesus. And I'm not saying just Jesus to undermine Jesus. I mean, I'm not saying that to take away or belittle Jesus. It's crazy that the way it's designed, but Jesus, whether he is the exact initial essence of God or not, is irrelevant. Everything God can do, Jesus can do. God gave him that power and authority, and that's all that matters. You and I can't. We can't do what he can do. So whatever you can do is nothing compared to what he can do. So I'm listening, and I'm bowing the knee. I'm bending the knee to him. I'm not bending my knee to nothing else and nobody else. I'm bending my knee to Jesus. Whether I'm saying his name right or not is irrelevant. Bending my knee to Jesus. All right. That's right. Absolutely. They're being lukewarm. And that's the problem. Accept it or don't accept it. Now, the problem we're fixing to deal with, and a lot of people that watch this are going to know this too when you watch these videos and see these content creators, or you're going to see them do this. They'll hide behind these excuses like, well, I'm still searching myself, or I don't necessarily know everything, or I don't know enough. And I kind of get that. I'm not going to accept one narrative over the other until I've read it, researched it, looked into it, and understand it. And then I can go, okay, yeah, I can bow to that. But if I haven't done the research and I did the due diligence, there's no reason for me to put faith in something like that I don't know. But often what'll happen is they'll hide behind this excuse to say, I didn't know, I'm not exactly sure, so I'm not going to say one way or the other. And I kind of feel like it really won't matter anyway, so I can kind of lean this way or kind of lean that way or whatever. And they just kind of do like that because they're afraid to acknowledge of what comes next. They're afraid to acknowledge what comes next. And to hide behind that ignorance, to hide behind ignorance is not going to help you, is all I'm saying. Whenever it comes down to it, and he says, well, you read it, you looked at it, you believed everything up to this point, and then you just said, you know what, I'm going to go right back to watching my pornography again. I'm going to go right back to eating my, gluttonous, feeding every fat cell in my body over and over and over again. Whatever it is that you're doing wrong, I'm not saying, not talking bad, trying to talk bad about. I'm trying to find examples that aren't going to offend anybody, but that's really hard to do when it comes to sin. People love it. They love their sin. They want to. No one wants America to stop being America. The ones that live here, whether they like it or not, whether you're a racist, a prejudiced, a Democrat, or a Republican, it don't matter. If you live here, you don't want to live nowhere else. You don't want to really change things too much. But you don't want to lose anything either. Jesus lost a lot. He lost everything, his life. And they made him unrecognizable. It's not like a limb got shot off or something. They could not recognize him. He lost everything so that we wouldn't have to lose anymore. And that's why all of this is out here and is here. It's for us to know and learn and understand that. I think sometimes the problem is sometimes Christians will fall into this trap where they find solace in the Jesus they're taught about. And they're just kind of accepting it. Okay, I know I don't know enough, or I don't know a lot of things, but at least I'm saved. Because otherwise, if I don't get to go to heaven, then his death was pointless. And I find that thought and mental process to be a selfish one or a self-leading one. Because at the end of the day, whether I go to heaven or hell has nothing to do with the fact that Jesus still died for me. And the same as he did for all of us. Whether we understand that or don't, that's the way it is. It's like, what else would you expect from a king? We had these 3 wise men show up over here in, what is it? What verse was it? I know it talks about it in one of the other, I think over in Mark, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's going to talk about all this stuff a little bit more. But in what chapter am I? Yeah. So chapter 2 of Matthew, in verse 7, it says, Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. These wise men are underrated as all get out in this Bible. First of all, these men were kings. They weren't just wise men. They were kings. There were kings from different nations, 3 different nations in the East out in the world. And when they showed up, it wasn't just this little gifts. I know what the Bible is going to tell us here in a minute. But the reason I know it was more than just what it's saying here is because I also understand that this was written after all these other books. So a lot of the other books kind of give you a few more details about the gifts and the circumstances around the gifts. But again, this kind of goes back to what I was saying in one of my previous episodes about this book is designed and written this way, kind of like short form, like a Facebook short or a YouTube reel. It's the short form of everything that happened in the past. They condensed it. That's why I call it a children's book. It's the short form. The adult version gives you all the major details, but that's when you learn about the real details about these kings. And that's what's fascinating about it. And I got to thinking about this, because there's a big question around when and what day does Jesus's 1,000-year kingdom start? Because we understand what happens between 63 and 70 AD. And I had read somewhere, and I don't remember if I heard it or read it, but there was someone that had a pretty good theory about how maybe that there was like 500 and something years of wars or something right before the millennial kingdom happened. So, but the only issue with that is if that were actually true, then there is no timeline deception. It is 2024, realistically speaking. Nothing really changes with our time. But so I don't know if that's actually correct, but what I do know is that that when all of this was taking place, these guys were expecting this guy to be the king of the world. But he was in hiding, or at least his parents were. I mean, he was in a manger, in a farm, basically. He went to a farmhouse, and not just any farm, a poor farmer's house. So it's not like he had a huge farm. It was just this old farmer and his family, a little sheep farmer or whatever. And so he had to they stayed in this manger over in Egypt, hiding from this King Herod, that these 3 wise men, when Herod the king, when they had heard the king, they departed. That king, when they heard of him, they came to see Jesus, and then they get stopped by King Herod. Well, that King Herod, oh, here he is, and was there until the death of Herod. Well, this Herod that dies here is not the same Herod over in Maccabees, by the way. When you read this, this brings you to a King Herod, but that Herod is a predecessor to the Herod in Matthew right here. But this Matthew Herod right here, he stopped these guys and he's talking to them. So they go to see Jesus, the king. And so for a long time there, I just assumed that his millennial kingdom began at his birth. But I guess ultimately he has to be ruling it. So just because he's here doesn't mean he's actually ruling it yet. So it does make sense that his kingdom necessarily wouldn't have started to at least sometime shortly thereafter 70 AD. If you gathered all the information from every eschatology scholar, take people like Rob Skiba, you can take Wes Huff even, by the way, that's going to be a very interesting video that I'm going to do on Wes Huff, I feel like, because I'm actually intimidated by that dude a little bit. But there's some things I would like to break down on his information too. He has a huge following. And now I'm not going after him because he has a huge following. But again, as a soldier, I'm looking at this thing like, oh, I'm fighting for God. Oh man, that dude's leading a whole lot of people astray. Let me see what I can do to help him out. And so that's all I'm intending to do with any of that, is to try to help guide people back on track. Yeah, Tabernacle Sukkot. Exactly. It wasn't like he was necessarily in a palace, But it wasn't like they were poor either. And I'm saying that they weren't poor in that moment when Jesus was born, but Jesus wasn't raised in a poor household necessarily, not the way that we would think of. It was more or less like he was being provided for. These kings were taking care of Jesus as he was growing up. I mean, even though they were from afar, they knew who he was and they knew why he was here. But until he rules the earth, his kingdom hasn't necessarily began yet. And so he has to actually go back up to heaven and get it and come back, so he's going to do that later on. And he does that. And then and that's the issue. When he does come back, we sit here and go, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. Because where is it at? My history teacher didn't tell me about it. I mean, if Jesus' kingdom was here, wouldn't I know? Wouldn't they have told me that? Wouldn't they have shared that information with me? No, they didn't. Huh, interesting is my thing, Why aren't they sharing that? Well, there's a reason for that, and it's because they don't want you to know about it. They don't want you to know that he was here, that he did do the things that he said he was going to do. It's amazing to me, all of this. It's the most fascinating book you could ever read. You got a little fella named David, now King David, old and stricken in his years. They covered him with clothes, but he gave no heed. His body was freezing cold. He died. He did. Even he died. As far as he's concerned, the world could have ended right after he died. It wouldn't matter. He's dead already. Just like for us, whatever happens to this world, whether it gets burned up and we get burned up with it, or it gets burned up and we're not here. Either way, whatever happens to this world, it really doesn't have any effect on you and me, my brothers and my sisters. The ones who have discovered this message have understood that they are being deceived. And I'm not saying that everybody is going to learn all of this. I'm not saying anybody anywhere is ever going to learn near the things that this community knows about this scripture. And I don't necessarily think it's necessary to know every detail. And the reason I lean on that is because if it were necessary, those details would be highlighted and more clear in scripture. When they don't tell you something, there's a reason they don't tell you. And as far as the Bible is concerned, I can only assume all those reasons are in my best interest. And when I read these other books like Maccabees, Jasher, Jubilees, it makes sense why they're not in there. I didn't need to know about all that. Imagine if no one knew ever about Nephilim, then the whole idea of gene splicing would never even come up in conversations. You wouldn't just be sitting around going, I wonder if we can mix a pig and a fox and see what happens. You wouldn't be thinking like that if the Bible didn't tell you about it. The problem is it was going to be put in here one way or the other because everybody else no one was going to stop talking about these things. They're just going to keep talking about it. And so the Bible puts it in there only enough for you to say, okay, all right, well, at least now I know for certain God did confirm that was happening. But, it led to bad things. Let's not do that. So let's stay away from that. Problem is you get too many educated people around and they end up saying, well, yeah, it was only a bad thing because they had bad intentions with it. Or it was only a bad thing because of this reason or that reason or whatever. They try to justify and defend it. Instead, they don't like to let God be the ultimate dictator and decider of that. It's an important thought on control of thought, dictator and decider of that. That's what ruling with a rod of iron is like. When back over here in Revelation, when Jesus is here, he ruled this world with a rod of iron. I can imagine the members, the descendants of the little families that run the world today, just sitting there foaming at the mouth, riddled with anger because they're sitting at home wanting to make their movies, but they can't do it because Jesus says no. King Jesus said, nope, we're not making movies. And we know what y'all like to do with them movies, and we're not doing that in my house. And my house is this world right now. So we're shutting that down. And these little people are at their houses just seething away, figuring out, how can I, ooh, man, whenever he's done here, I'm corrupting this. I'm twisting this up. I'm about to start educating people, like Wendy just said, educated. That's the thing. We're going to educate these people, and they're going to be so smart. And they're going to know that this is BS, and they're going to stop following this word, and they're going to start following this education. We don't have to lean on Jesus no more. We don't have to worry about his kingdom. We don't have to worry about none of that. We can just do what we want. We can believe it or not believe it. They'll get to a point where they understand, like in Colossians 2. Where it says certain things are worth worrying about and some things aren't. Don't argue about Christmas and holidays. There's no point in doing that. And they'll apply that also to everything else and go, well, maybe none of it matters. Well, when I say these things matter or don't matter here and there as these podcast discussions go, what I want you to understand is when I'm saying that certain things don't matter, I'm not saying they don't matter at all. I'm saying they don't matter in the context of whatever it is we're discussing. So like when it comes to you, who Cain was don't matter. That has nothing to do with you. It has no effect on you or not. If that information was lost, it wouldn't change anything for us. It wouldn't change anything. And so that's why I say like certain things are important and some things aren't. But at the same time, I can understand why people are going to argue and say that I'm just talking, no, that's just your opinion. Well, it's not. It has nothing to do with my opinion. My opinion is I didn't know any of this stuff till I read it. I didn't know if I believed any of this stuff until I saw it. When I saw it with my own eyes, I went, yeah, I can't argue with that. Yeah, I know what's going to happen. If I talk about this, I'm crazy. If I talk about this, I'm hated. If I talk about this, oh, you're one of them guys. You're one of those flat earth guys. I heard that the other day. It's funny though. The fella that was kind of making that joke to me, maybe he was expecting me to be offended by it. Instead, I just laughed about it. I said, oh yeah, that's me. He said, oh yeah, you're one of those flat earth guys. I went, oh yeah, that's me. And then a couple days later, he's like, I was looking into these ice walls, and I just laughed. I was like, yeah, it's a seed. You can't stop it from growing once it gets in there, though. You may not acknowledge it publicly, but I know a lot of people that'll tell me, that'll catch me off to the side, and they'll be like, I believe this. I just, how it is. You just can't talk about that kind of stuff, Well, it's not that you can't talk about it, but they're afraid to, because there are people that will try to punish you. There are people that will try to come after you. Well, let's go. I'm not worried about any of that either. I have a weapon called a Bible right here. It says every answer I need. It doesn't matter what books you read. I don't, that's one thing I will kind of go over when I do my breakdown narrative for Wes Huff. When we get into that discussion, that dude is super smart. He knows a lot of stuff. He's read a ton of stuff. He's done a lot of research and study. I'm almost, regretful to even think that I should do a video on him. Because I'm not where he's at. I'm sitting at 90 people with 35 videos and one that I accidentally deleted. But regardless, Wes Huff knows some things. But when I get into his stuff and start breaking his stuff down, I think it's going to be really interesting because you're also going to learn a lot of stuff from him. He has a lot of good information, but there's some takes that he has that I just kind of want to reevaluate, and I want to kind of just point that out to you guys so y'all can see where I'm coming from with this whole series. You know, you'll be able to watch every one of them and go, oh yeah, that's why that is what that is. Hopefully you'll understand where I'm coming from with all of that as we go through it. But I'm a little intimidated by him, only because he knows a lot. He probably has read several books that I haven't even heard of yet, just being honest. But within that intimidation, I'm not worried because I've read this one, and this is the only one that matters. Even after I've read all them others, this is ultimately the only book that really matters. This whole King James Bible. It's the only one that matters. How we react is important. That impression is what the person is left with on the topic at hand. Exactly. I think that's where, like, that whole, like the term Bible thumpers come from, or Jesus freaks. People say, I have to tell people, now I'm not one of these religious freaks, or I'm not one of these Bible thumpers, but I do read that sucker every day, and I do study it, and I do believe in it, but I'm not here to try to push that on anybody. I'm just here to tell you what I learned from it, and that's how I am with most people. And most people, want to learn or want to listen, especially if you have a mix of testimony in that, people love hearing how someone, fell and stood up, they like hearing that type of stuff. But a lot of this stuff too also comes with agendas. Some people will look and read into things and research into things and learn about things and watch things because of how it makes them feel. They start chasing that dopamine drip in the back of their head as that thing is dripping down into that spine and making you feel good, High. I call it, it's like when I see people driving down the road like this, they're up there driving, doing this, and I see them, and I'm like, oh man, that dude's in, he needs AA, he has an addiction problem, but where I was going with that, but the whole point that I guess I think with that is just point out that you're right. How we react is important. The impression people get from what you're discussing, they need to be able. All want to be able to relate to whatever it is you're saying. If they can't relate to it or they can't appreciate it, they're not going to listen. They're just going to leave or not deal with you. But also that can lead to other problems too. It can lead to like squabbles and fights. It can lead to, true disagreements and division, because a lot of times people don't realize what may feel right to them is not necessarily going to feel right to everybody else. I have no personal issues towards anyone, none of these content creators. I'm not calling them out to try to call them out, and I'm not calling them out. I'm just saying there's a lot of content out there, and there's a lot of people that are being misled by this content, and I don't want to see any more people get misled. Like, I'm tired of it, because the more and more people get misled, worse and worse this endurement that I'm having to deal with while I'm witnessing all this stuff in this life gets worse and worse and harder. And so I'm ready for some people to wake up and start talking and realizing, hey, we are in a deception. We are in a little season. There is something going on, we need to talk about this. We need to get this out in the air, and we need to be able to say, hey, we need to go down here and tell this dude or that dude what we need them to do or not do. And we need to be able to move forward in life instead of keep moving backwards. It's one thing I agreed with Shelley the other night, is that we keep taking 2 steps forward but 4 steps back, and that is true. We are doing that, but we're doing that because I think most people at the end of the day just can't fully accept every word in this book. That's why you have people on the fence. You know, they lean a little one way, maybe a little bit the other way. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a safe place to be because you could always say, well, I didn't know for sure. I almost thought yeah, that's right. I did think that. Or let it be the other, no, yeah, that's right. I did think that, So whichever one it ends up being, they're going to end up going with. Well, God understands that because that's what's in your heart. You have doubt. So, but that doubt, I don't think is going to be just like ultimately you're going to hell now. You're going to go get burned up. It doesn't say that anyways. It says you'll be judged. And that's the thing that scares people because we start trying to think about how God's going to judge us, and the only thing we can think is how we would judge us. But God's not you. And what I mean by that is I know most people are thinking the same thing I was thinking. I thought the same thing at one point. I'm terrible. I'm a terrible person. He's going to be hard on me. I mean, oh man, I'm going to hell. I'm going to the lake of fire. That's what I was worried about. But now I realize maybe it ain't like that necessarily. And whether it is or is, it's not like I can do anything about it. I can't change that part of it. But what I can do is try to work on these things that he's going to judge me on. And not everything that you do is going to be right. I mean, obviously, not the people that inherit the new earth, they're not perfect beings. I mean, none of us are perfect now, and we're never going to be perfect until God makes us perfect. We're not going to be perfect till we get to that new world, till we get over there into chapter 22. When we get to that point, then we'll be in our perfect new bodies. We'll be the way Jesus came to us in the way he was. We will be like them, God and Jesus. I'm not saying we will be equal to them. I'm saying that we won't be like we are right now. Things will be better, and that's where we'll be there, in our new glorified existence, our new eternal selves. We won't have to worry about none of this. So that's why some things matter, some things don't. And then when it comes to scripture, it comes to the Bible, and then it comes to debates and conspiracy theories, a lot of times people get lost in them. They start forgetting what's important. Is it this or is it that that's important? I mean, what exactly is going on here? What should I be focused on? This man, David, led to this man, Jesus. And this man here is the reason any of us are able to watch this video or have this interaction or enjoy this Christmas Eve and this Christmas Day tomorrow. With that said, I love everybody. I'm glad that everybody that was here was able to attend. Wendy, you are a rock star, Wendy. I am so glad you were here with me. It really helped me out a lot, you being here. But that said, I'm going to wrap this up with that statement. Jesus is the reason for the season. Whether these roots started from one end or the other, intent is what matters. So at the end of the day, celebrate however you want to celebrate, but understand that the only reason you can be here is because of all the people in this book. The sacrifices, the good choices and the bad choices and everything they had going on had to happen and allowed for you and I to be here. And that's what's great about it. It's learning about all this. So some of this stuff, yeah, you may need to know. Some of it you may not need to know. But when it comes to being judged, don't worry about stuff like that. Don't worry about whether God's going to condemn you and push you into the lake of fire. Just because Shelley doesn't believe exactly the way I believe doesn't necessarily mean she's going to the lake of fire. I mean, she's not condemned for that. And I'm not condemning her for that. And my series is not to condemn anyone for that. But what I'm saying is that when we are judged, I'm just saying that at the end of the day, some of us are going to be on different levels in this new kingdom. I mean, maybe Miss Wendy lives in a mansion high up on a hill, but I live in a little 1,300 square foot house down at the bottom. Hey, it's fine with me. I'm still kicking. I'm still living. I'm still breathing. I'm living in this nice house, and I'm sure Wendy wouldn't mind if I took a stroll up there and come on, hung out once in a while, talk about God. It wouldn't matter to me the blessing I received. And that's all I want you to understand from that, is that when it comes to God's judgment, yes, some people probably are not going to make it and will end up into the lake of fire, but ultimately there will be sinners that will be in their new glorified bodies going, yay, I made it. Can't believe it, and be glad and thankful that they're there. But that said, it's Christmas Eve. Tomorrow's Christmas Day. I'm debating on whether or not I'll go live tomorrow. I'm going to take a look at YouTube. I haven't been keeping up with a lot of people very much here recently. But I'm going to look and see if anyone else is live streaming. I don't want to overlap any of these content creators right now, especially tomorrow, because I'm excited to see what they have to say. In fact, I haven't watched anybody's stuff in a few days, so I'm going to probably cut out here pretty soon, and then I'm going to finish watching Miss Shelley's video. And like I said, I'm going to watch that one to myself because I don't want to break it down with you guys tonight, because that wasn't the intent with this. My intent was to show you that Jesus, our King, is a king from a royal bloodline of kings, a ton of them. And from him, we have us here today. And he's coming back, but he's coming back with the mighty Father himself. And then we will all understand what it means to have Christmas and whatnot. Oh yeah, he will. Oh, he will. That's right. I did see that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to his stuff. I like catching up with them on Sundays. I'm new to some of these creators, content creators, Miss Wendy. So I am trying to learn who some of them are. I do, and have, however, trying to comment a little bit here and there in the comment section, just to kind of participate and join the community outside of my lives and whatnot. I like Connor though; he's real cool. I like his message. It's interesting though. Didn't matter who you listened to, if they made it to chapter 20 and they're on board with the Little Season stuff, we're all basically saying the same thing. Just some of us say it differently, and that's all there is with that. I got you. Yeah, Wednesday. So, yeah, today's Tuesday. Oh, that's right. So I kept thinking today was Wednesday because I don't know why I'm used to Christmas being on Thursday or Friday. It's weird. It's like on a Wednesday this month. It's really odd how our calendar works, and I'm gonna go over that in the timeline stuff. It's really interesting because 12 months and odd number of days in each month versus 13 months or 28 days in a space. It's kind of simple. That's not only simple, but it actually is accurate. And it's why I'm trying to do all this, because when I read all this, I go, man, they tried to make this thing complicated at church. It's not complicated. I just need to stop trying to use my education to read it. I just need to just read it and see what it says and just kind of go with that. And that's where I kind of lean on. Wednesdays are less serious. Yeah, I get that. I'm not sure though. It just depends on what time I get back home. My brother is having a dinner or something, so I'm gonna go over there and see him. But he lives about an hour from me, so it's a good drive, and so that's at least 2 hours just in driving. So depending on what time I get back from that, I may go live tomorrow night. But if I don't go live tomorrow night, I'm definitely going to go live the next night. Now, next week I go at work. I'll be on call. For those that may not catch a live next week, it'll be because I'm on call and I don't have time to actually go live because I'm either working or I got to be prepared and ready to leave at any moment. So if I don't go live, that's for that reason. Or I might do a shorter live, like an hour or so, maybe 30 minutes or something like that. Either way, I hope everybody has a good Christmas, a good holiday season, and I hope everybody has enjoyed this content, this video, and continue to serve and seek the truth. I hope everybody has at least gain something from this, whether it's this video or one of the videos that I share with you or send you to watch. I hope everybody kind of gets something that they can take away from it. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Jubilees and Enoch. Yeah, and I'm gonna pull that up too. Yeah, I'm gonna pull all those up. And so that's the thing, building the timeline, you have to use all those books. You can't just, it's really hard to do it. It's really hard to just go with Genesis. I'm sorry. I know I keep saying I'm going to shut down. It's kind of like one of those things, but it's how my mind works. You'll say something and then it'll get me to thinking and I go, oh yeah, that's right. But you're right. Jubilees and Enoch. You have to have all these extra books to really build this thing. So when we get to the Bible study timeline part of this series, for people that are new to all this, understand that we're not going out of scripture to try to learn something else other than what the Bible says. We're just going outside of that to get a little bit more details, a little bit more information. Other than that, that's all I had for you guys for this evening. I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday, a good evening, and a good night. I don't really want to talk too much about Santa Claus. That's a whole nother thing, but you guys are awesome. You guys are amazing. I love you guys, and I will see you again when I come back next time.